Go ahead.
All right, good evening. Welcome to the Bethel Local Schools Board of Education special meeting in regards to the Facilities Committee. Tonight is Monday, September 14th, 2020. Call to order will be 5:02 p.m. Ms. Reese, can you please call the roll?
Yes. Rick Gilbert, Justin Firks,
Present.
Brendan Hattery,
Present.
Chris Mills,
He's here.
Present.
Danny Elam,
Here.
Lori Sebastian,
Here.
Julie Reese, present, Caleb Runkle.
He could not make it tonight.
So is Rick on?
No.
Okay.
Do we have any additions to the agenda?
Justin, I just had one, since we're considering future athletic considerations, we may also want to add future community considerations. I know we had briefly discussed a community building or like a building to house another gym, and then also a picnic shelter.
Sure. So I'll add a community athletic center and then also kind of like a shelter house.
Yes, and I believe if Mike and Mark are in the room, I think they already had the auditorium somewhere, but I just don't want them to fall off the plate.
Okay. I will add that underneath letter C, number 2. It'll be letters C and D.
Okay, thank you.
Any other additions to the agenda? Okay, thank you, Mrs. Sebastian, for those additions. Communications, meetings, and announcements. None at this time. Number 5, items for discussion, subcommittee reports. Letter A has to do with temporary swing space, the Will Scott modular units, final status update. As far as the modular units, they are obviously occupied and on site. We still are in the process of finishing up some punch list items on the inside, which are very minor cosmetic. And then also Will Scott needs to come back and return. We're still working with them on that. They were able to get some work done last week late on Friday on the back side towards the building, the skirting at the bottom. They still need to come back and finish some of the skirting on the side of the complex units near the bus barn, and then also directly in front of the units towards the football stadium. So we hope to have an update and completion on the skirting, but a lot of the punch list items are being completed and will be completed. Fire alarm system has been installed. Inspections have all passed, obviously, with occupancy. And then finally, technology department recently was able to secure a couple of the, for lack of a better term, the ID card readers to place out there as well, so that staff can get in and out with the same ID badge that they use throughout the building. So overall, the units are completed. Just a few minor cosmetic things that still need to be finalized. Anybody have any questions in regards to the temporary swing space?
Justin, I'd just like to thank you for all your work and probably Todd's work with Will Scott. I know it was a long process and he had to have it done in a certain time frame, so I really appreciate all the following up you guys did.
You're welcome. Julie, you have a question?
I just realized we had another addition to the agenda. You wanted to talk about having a core team going
Oh,
forward.
yeah.
I forgot, sorry.
That's fine. We can always add it. We didn't have to do an approval of the agenda, so we can add it toward the end.
Okay.
That works.
Yeah, sure.
Letter B, architect construction reps status update. Been in conversations with not only Levin Porter, but also Garmin and Miller as we transition from the completion of the master facilities plan to engaging with Garmin and Miller for the design phase of the K-5 building and also the athletic facility. Next steps for both of those parties will obviously be Levin Porter submitting the master facilities plan for consideration to the OFCC. That will be done very, very shortly. We will also have a couple of resolutions that'll be on our board agenda this evening at 7 o'clock for consideration in regards to OFCC and also next steps as far as the process. We will also preliminary have for consideration this evening the hiring of Garmin and Miller. They are still obviously pending agreement to a contract similar to what we do with employees. Once we receive that contract, we will have Mr. Pogorski review the contents and materials to ensure that it's a good fit for both parties before we have it on a future agenda for consideration. Next steps for the architect will be Garmin and Miller will be putting out RFP for 3 companies to come in and provide quotes to conduct an updated site survey of the total land that the district currently sits on, not only currently, but also in the future, the 160 plus acres of land. The last time a survey was done was 2003, I believe. And so part of that survey will be taking a look at soil borings, we'll be taking a look at potential wetlands, taking a look at potential spots that facilities will sit on to make sure that, I guess, environmentally, there aren't any major issues that we may run into before we get to a construction phase or a finalized design phase where we have a building or a site located. So that should take place hopefully in the next couple of days. That will involve some sort of a survey, land survey company to come in and do that.
RFP,
RFP.
request for
I'm still trying to figure out what that stands for.
proposal.
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 There you go.
Thank you.
Number 2 will be another RFP for construction firms. So to kind of walk you through how that process will look, it'll be very similar to our RFQ that we posted on the website, in the newspaper, et cetera. We'll have it open for a determined period of time. It'll allow construction firms to submit their RFP to be the primary construction company to embark upon the building process. With the help of the architect, we will shortlist the number of firms that we receive down to 3 firms. You will then conduct 2 interviews, either facilities committee / board, or however you guys want to have that look. I would say probably very similar to our architectural interviews. So your first interview will be an opportunity for those firms to come in, ask us questions, allow for us to describe our expectations for the project, our expectations for management of the project, et cetera. Garmin and Miller will kind of provide a format for you guys to look at in that interview, and then we'll also allow you some input on, what it could look like as well. Once you complete that first interview of the shortlisting of 3 firms, you'll bring them back for a second and a final interview. And during that second and final interview, we'll allow them to provide an opportunity to give you costs, admin fees, to talk a little bit about their qualifications, et cetera. And then obviously as a facility / board, you'll work strongly with Garmin and Miller to try to figure out who the facilities committee wants to recommend to the board as far as who the construction company, construction manager at risk will be for the project. Does anyone have any questions in regards to that at all?
What is our time frame for the construction manager process? I know you talked us through the interview process. What are you thinking timeline-wise?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Brennan, but for the RFQ, we posted it for a couple of weeks, didn't we?
Yeah,
Is that just something we did based on our thoughts, or is that some sort of ORC requirement for the length of time it's posted?
I'm pretty sure for RFQs, you have to post them for at least 2 weeks.
This is an RFP.
These
is
are
that similar?
RFPs.
But I think what you were talking about for RFQ is usually you get qualifications and then you interview. And then you do an unless I'm different. An RFP, request for proposals, where dollar amounts are usually given. Whereas an RFQ, you ask for qualifications and then you can interview.
Okay.
So either or, a request for proposal is usually 3 weeks by RFC.
Okay.
You have to do continuing weeks,
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
So I will follow up, Lori, Mrs. Sebastian, with Garmin Miller tomorrow to see how long that they recommend that we'll need to post for. And I can send an email update out to the board and also the facilities committee and let you folks know as far as how long it needs to be posted for.
That sounds great. And are we thinking then first interviews would be the next facilities meeting on October, is it the 12th? I'm gonna have to look here. Yeah, October 12th. Is that what we're thinking? Or are we gonna call a special meeting?
I guess timeline wise, it just depends on the length of time. I mean, if we can, we could have it that night, but also if we could get it done sooner, that would probably be best benefit for everybody involved, just for the fact that the sooner that you get your construction manager at risk in place and you kind of get that settled, then you can start your design process, however you folks want to have it look like as far as, you know, community meetings, input, surveys. So that'd be discussions with Garmin and Miller.
Well, I would see how it goes with your discussion with Garmin Miller and go from there and tell us what
Okay.
we need to do.
Yeah, we'll do. I will get on the horn. Well, actually, Garmin and Miller will be here this evening for the regular board meeting, so that'll give me a chance to ask them at that time and kind of get some input from them when we do an introduction of those folks and welcome them to Bethel Local Schools. I'll make sure I ask them during the traditional board meeting. Any other questions in regards to letter B, architect construction rep status update? Okay, moving on to letter C in regards to master facilities plan, status update. There was some discussion in regards to potentially looking at future athletic considerations in regards to not only our football, track, soccer complex, but also taking a look at expansion of our current school site to include looking at the development of a cross-country course, which would not only allow our student athletes to consistently practice here on campus, but also provide us the opportunity to be able to host invitationals and meets, which I think would be a great addition to our school facility. Not only adding track and field complex to allow us to host invitationals or potentially regional or district level meets, but also being able to have a cross-country course and being able to have a place for our cross-country runners to call home, and also have invitationals after school or on Saturdays, which I think would just add to more visitors and also community members coming up on campus and kind of making this the center or the hub of the community as we have envisioned for the last several years. So any thoughts on a cross-country course? And then another one that was brought up was with the additional green space area. I believe this has been discussed previously, and maybe some of the folks that were involved in those conversations can kind of share their thoughts on it. But adding a potential Frisbee or disc golf course as well. For any of the members.
I don't know much about the Frisbee golf course thing, except for my kids said it's great fun.
And the 3 that Lori just mentioned.
Yeah, and also
Area.
a community athletic center, and then also a shelter house as well.
Yeah, on the Frisbee disc golf course, I had heard something 6 months ago that it was a Boy Scout Eagle project supposedly, but I don't know if it ever got off the ground or if it died because we didn't have a master plan in it. When I was thinking about cross country course, I said, well, the time to do it is now, like to at least map it out. And then I think you and Jacob had mentioned some kind of community center. And we, on the original facility plan, we had a picnic shelter somewhere nearby the elementary playground, wherever that's going to be, because the thought was there's not really a central place in Bethel for people to come have picnics. And a lot of times when groups gather, they want the kids to be able to play in a safe place. So that was the thought. I'm not saying we have to do it this instant, but just have it on there for a future project consideration.
I don't know what the community members or facility members think, but I think they're all great ideas.
Absolutely. I would. be
I love the
behind that.
picnic shelter.
And I know at least, I know Tip Foundation a few years ago was very interested in potentially helping fund that. So we might even be able to get some local grants to help with part of it.
Well, these are all things that we can certainly start to speak with Garmin and Miller about once the design process starts and once they start mapping out with our assistants what the facility is going to look like, not only in the next 3 to 5 years, but long term, and we can kind of plot or chart these areas and where they could be potentially located at for the facilities committee to take a look at and figure out what's going to fit best for the district and for Bethel local schools. Any other input as far as other things we may want to consider in addition to those 4 items? Cross country, Frisbee golf, community athletic center, and shelter house?
Well, I think we have some on the list already, like Lori was saying, don't lose sight of the auditorium.
Yeah,
I think tennis courts had come up in the past as
Yes.
a potential future sport. So I'm sure there's gonna be other ideas. The thing is,
Sure.
we keep them on a list. We don't forget about them when
Yeah.
we start the planning.
Yeah.
You need to back up to number 1, too. What's that? Is that right?
you want to go back to number 1?
That was for Loveland Porter to give us an update on the OFCC master plan and where it stands and when to do anything.
It's just them finishing it up and submitting it.
Are we gonna get to see it? I thought we had the vote on it soon,
As far as what?
the master plan.
The master plan.
The master plan is K5 and
They're not going to include all the design that doesn't need to be in the master facilities plan.
No, I know, but the board still has to do a resolution, right, to pass it? or to-
yeah, but it's on tonight.
Don't need to know.
But we haven't even seen the master facilities plan.
Your master facilities plan is a K5 building for your L project.
Julie, my understanding is we just had to submit the text that we were going to do a K5 building. That's it. We don't have to have the details fleshed out yet.
That's what Garmin and Miller will do. during the design
I understand, but Love and Porter was supposed to produce a document for us, correct? So do we not get to see that
It
document?
is, it's the L project agreement that I sent out last Friday that's on board doc.
Okay. So I had some other questions too about, what about the options and upgrades? We had talked about in the past, I don't know when we need to decide these. If we were gonna do the storm shelter,
That's all done during your design phase with Garmin and Miller.
so we don't have to tell the OFCC that, because last time Love and Porter said we had to tell them if we were gonna do a bigger sized gym as part of the elementary.
Well, that was probably them thinking they were going to be in the design phase.
Okay, so we don't need to do that for,
Hmm.
okay, that's fine then.
I don't believe so. I can double check with them.
Okay,
But essentially, your enrollment numbers will be in your master facilities plan. And Valerie Montoya from the state just needed to know if we were doing a K5 or what. So we indicated via email it was a K5 building and an athletic complex. And then, as Brendan indicated, that RFQ, or not RFQ,
L agreement.
the up agreement was sent out to you guys last Friday.
So that's the document that Levin Porter produced? Or that's something that's just something that the OFCC found?
I believe it was produced by OFCC and Levin Porter. I mean, they had to provide the data and the information and the numbers.
There are a number of documents in that ilk,
Right,
numbers
yeah,
and
I saw
enrollment and so forth.
that. Okay. I guess we've been talking so long about a master's facility plan that I was just expecting something called a master facilities plan. You know, because we talked about having addendums to it and,
But I think that was under the presumption that they were going to be your architectural firm, so they were trying to get ahead of the game and start laying out. And they completely change now that Garner Miller is in the equation.
okay,
Doesn't have to, but I'm assuming you're going to want your architectural firm involved in the conversation as far as where things are located.
no, I agree. I agree. I'm not saying anything against that. I'm just saying, because we had talked about the master facilities plan so long, I just expected to see a document. And I thought that was one of the things that was in the
So what
original.
were you expecting to see a document with like actually physical locations identified on it?
No, because that didn't have to be part of it. They said that would be an addendum that
Yeah,
eventually we would do. So,
yeah.
I don't know.
So what do you want me to have them send you in addition?
No, I don't want them to send me anything. I'm just saying I'm just a little confused because I thought just because we had talked about it for so long, I expected to see a document in the end. But it's fine. It's fine. I
Okay.
understand now.
Okay.
And the regular citizens ask questions.
Sure.
So yeah, I'm kind of curious, right? So one would, then what are we producing to OFCC? Was there other documents that Levin Porter had to produce as part of this master plan to the OFCC? For example, based on the status of the age infrastructure, go through that process to clarify like the best plan moving forward is a new building, not to renovate that space because it's not cost effective. Is that how they kind of worked us through that process and submitted that?
Correct. They did their assessments and they provided documents in the past that indicated, you know, here's how much it would cost to renovate versus construct new.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. Now, the next steps will also be Governor Miller coming in and doing a site survey. And that has to be done before you can even start the design process, because they want to take a look, or you will probably weren't here for this part. They want to take a look at the whole entire plot of land, take a look at rock, they want to take a look at water areas and, you know, runoffs and all that kind of stuff to basically say, well, you can put it here, but here are some problems you may run into from the soil borings. This is going to cost you this much money, that kind of stuff. Because we have not done a site survey of this land since, according to GBC engineering firm, since 2003 was the last time an environmental site study was done.
Yeah, so in regards to what they're producing for that master facilities plan was those original documents getting us to the position we're in now.
Yeah.
Working with the OFCC to determine
Yeah.
what is our most, we had a couple of courses of action we could have taken. And we made the choice locally to build a K-5 building instead of other options that were on the table.
Yeah, we had to take a look at a new 6-8 building, I think. I think we had to take a look at a new high school. Those dollar amounts didn't fit within the budget dollar amount that we had. You know, we had that, what was the number, Brendan, $28 million? I think the high school and the middle school cost more because of cost per square footage based on classroom space.
The middle school was not more, but it didn't meet the number.
Number of students, that's what it was. High school was more money, middle school didn't meet the number of students, which led us down the path from their pre-work to a K-5 building. And then we were able to, because of the cost, have additional funds left over to take an LFI. And I think we took community input to come up with the stadium project and the track for the soccer field.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of, and I think too was, there was a little bit of conversation there, what they thought about was if we did a new stadium, that there might be opportunity. I was kind of lost in there a little bit where it was, what if we did the renovation? Did we get the softball, baseball
your RFP process and you start to take a look at your construction firms, and then interview number 2, when they start to provide administration fees and costs, that's what's gonna determine, based on construction numbers and what they feel like the bidding's gonna be, what's the dollar amount, and then if there's gonna be additional funds. Because from what we've been told, I don't know if it's gonna be true for this project, but in recent school projects, there've been less and less school projects going on. So it seems like construction firms are all competing for the same projects, and therefore it's driving the cost bid down.
Right.
Schools aren't seeing as much of an increase in construction costs as previous.
Right. And I think as part of our master plan, what Legal Port produced was the majority of the 81 documents that Brendan's looking through.
Yeah, all that stuff right there.
And use that in the master facilities plan. But one of the things that I think, that I wanted, or, that I envisioned was one picture that depicts everything, right? I think that's what everybody's kind of looking for, is what is the next phase? What are we going to see? What is this whole space going to look like for the next 50 years with our projected placement of everything? And I don't know if that was them or that will be Garmin Miller.
I would anticipate that would be Garmin Miller, just for the fact that I think a couple of the firms through the interview process had brought up some concerns in regards to what is located on the property environmentally, that I think they're gonna wanna come in and have a survey done and take a look at those spots and say, it's as big of a concern as we thought during our presentation, or it's not as much as we originally thought, and therefore you can construct a stadium on top of that, what was considered a wetland.
Right, yeah, I think in 2008, they did the wetland assessment and came out with the fact that it was not a wetland,
Yeah.
even though they're showing it on the GIS map, but it was determined not to be a wetland area.
Okay. I did speak with the gentleman who conducted that survey in 2008. I can't remember the name of the firm. I think it's GBC Engineering. I do remember his name. It's Ed Alaska. Alaska with a G at the front. That's how I can remember it. It was easy. He did indicate, I think maybe just to cover himself and his firm, that they want to come back out and redo it, just because they don't know in that 12 years if things have changed. So,
And it is a long time.
so I had a conversation with him on the phone late last week. So once we get that information, I think Garmin Miller is going to be able to get some companies lined up to do a site survey as well, and just take a look at the whole plot of land. And then once that survey is done, and I think they can present to the facilities committee and the board, what are options, then you guys can start to say, okay, it's going to cost this much money to run a water line here, or you may run some bedrock here, you may not want to build there, and then you can start placing things once the site survey is done, or land survey.
So I think what would be nice is once we figure out where the stadium's going and the K5 building's going, if we could go ahead and gray out all of those additional things on one picture, so that when somebody's coming through and decides so that we can see where the cross-country course might fit, where the Frisbee course, the pavilion's gonna go, so it doesn't impact, oh, hey, somebody built a pavilion right where the corner of the high school, so we have to tear it down in 5 years, or we have to move the high school into a position we don't like. I thought it'd be nice if we had it. That's kind of what I thought was the master facilities plan, was that one-stop shop where you see not only current, projected, and then other things for future if needed, right? Would be on that one big old piece of paper.
I think you're definitely going to get there.
Okay.
It'll just be with your architectural firm that you selected. So I would think that's going to be part of the upcoming process as far as not only design of this K5 in the athletic complex, but you're also going to look at your site plan for the next 20 years. And they're going to put it on probably a giant display board that you can put outside the football stadium, the gymnasium, Bethel Hall, where people are going to see it to kind of show what potentially Bethel local schools is going to look like over the next X number of years.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any comments in regards to that as far as building location options, athletic facility options?
Well, I'm gonna have the same conversation when we get to the next meeting, because we have an agenda item that says resolution to accept master facility plan. So I'm still confused.
Which is the plan that Vernon just pulled up. That's
So
the
what's
plan,
the expedited local partnership program?
the effort that we're participating in to construct the K through 5 building? You have two programs. You have HELP or you have CFAB.
No, I understand those things. I'm saying we have agenda item for that as well.
This is your plan right here, new K-5 building. That's the first part of your master facility plan. And we're doing that through ELP, because we're not in.
So that's it. That's the whole plan right there, that paragraph.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, for the purposes of ELP, yes. For the purposes of us knowing what we're doing for the going forward building projects, like, no, do you know what I'm saying? I think it's a dual purpose thing that we got going on here. For the purposes of ELP though, yes. For the purposes of this resolution, yes. Right?
Yeah, the resolution is just to allow the district to commit that we're moving forward with a building project.
Right,
What the project looks like and what your site plan looks like now and in the future will be the upcoming work that we do with Garmin Miller. You know,
Right.
A lot of that discussion is being done with Levin Porter, and I think, you know, they were just trying to get ahead of the game, presuming that they were going to be the architectural firm that was selected. Whereas, you know, we could have halted the whole design of the facilities and said, you're just going to focus in on the master facilities plan, and then we're going to open it up from the get-go, and we don't know who's going to get it. We never want to solve site plan options.
right. And I think in our mind, I just think we in our mind thought that we were gonna have like a much broader thing to vote on when we did our resolution. I think all of us in our mind kind of saw this more, you know, documentation wise, kind of like when we did our strategic plan, like we were going to have something that we would look at and we would edit and we would go through, and we just had this, you know, much broader thing where there would be diagrams and a plan, like here's our first project and diagrams, and here's our next project and diagrams, and the next project and diagrams, and we had it mapped out for like the next 15 years, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we thought when we thought master facilities plan from Levin Porter. That was what we saw in our brains. And what we really are doing is this little document that we did for ELP. And so we're just justifying that in our minds now, and it's just all kind of clicking in our heads. And we really
Yeah, I
want
mean,
the first thing, and we're really getting the second thing. So
yeah, I 100% understand what you're saying. You know, OFCC doesn't necessarily get wrapped up in what we're talking about.
yeah,
They just want us to verbally commit that we're doing a K-5
right,
in an athletic complex. We do the resolution. We agree to participate in ELP. And then once that's done, we get involved in whoever we choose as an architect. OFCC is not involved in that. And we design what our facility looks like moving forward. As long as our first phase of our project is a K-5 and a stadium, and we meet what their requests are or what we told them we were doing,
Yep.
we can design our facility however we see fit with the dollars that we have, as long as we stay within that budget.
totally. And I think where we're justifying in our minds and trying to like reconcile is that we're reconciling the check that we gave to Levin Porter for the contract and this little thing that we're turning into Victoria Montoya or Valerie Montoya. You know, we're like, we spent all this money and we went through this whole big process, and then the document we have to show for it is very small. So, you know, it's just that reconciliation in our mind of the money that we've spent for what we're getting out of it. And it's just, for a board member, you're just like, wow, that was disappointing. Like, you know what I mean? And we get that it was progress, and we understand that we now know what we're doing. And I think we all see that we've made progress, and we're thankful for the effort they made. And we know that we put in the work and that they put in the work, and we're thankful for all of that. And we're not trying to negate that at all, but it's just, it's difficult for us to look at this tiny little piece of paper and be like, huh, that's disappointing, you know? So it's okay though. I think we all get it and we're on the same page now, but
Yeah, it'll also be those other documents that were sent out Friday with, you know, part of the enrollment projection numbers and square footage and all that. out of the
Right,
way.
progress was made and that's good. It's all good. I just think we're just justifying it in our minds now. That's all.
Perhaps the survey that went out to the community asking about tennis courts, soccer fields, high schools, elementary schools, led everyone to believe that we were going to see a picture.
Well, we
at
definitely
some
will,
point.
just not at this phase.
Right,
Your picture will start getting developed now that you have Garmin and Millwell.
sure.
After you consider them this evening, now you're gonna start forming your picture based on your land survey results. That's the next step. Once you consider and potentially hire Garmin Miller tonight, the first thing they're gonna come in and do is get a land survey done. Second thing is to start to do an RFP for the construction manager at risk, and then we'll start a whole other process, just like we went through with the master facilities plan and looking at different options and what people want, or what the design of the building looks like and where it's gonna be located and
But now perhaps after this phase is done, the next phase can use the same information and won't have to be done.
that's correct. Yeah, Garmin Miller has already requested the master facilities plan from Evan Porter.
Well, I mean the site
Yeah.
inspection and all that.
Correct. And they've also requested the soil borings testing that was done, and then also the water line extensions that were done by the Miami County as far as if you place it here, it's gonna be this.
Sure.
So they have all that information that will now go into providing options for you guys to decide, where you want things located at on your billboard master facilities plan that will be developed.
The only thing you have to do again for phase 2 is go through the architect and CMR again.
Right.
Yeah.
So I just gotta tell you, I was not expecting what Lyda said. I was expecting one of the questions Jacob was asking was, we went through this big process, we took surveys. I expected to see all this stuff in a comprehensive document that said, here's what the OFCC said as far as why we would want to demolish these buildings versus renovate them. We had numbers for that. We had numbers for picking a new school, why we would pick the school that we picked based on the numbers and what came out and the reasons for getting to the decision so that we had that history. So for me, it wasn't just a picture of what things are going to look like in the future. I mean, we just spent months on this, and we have a paragraph that says we're going to produce a K5 in the stadium.
No, I agree with you that modality would have been in there too, Julie. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I'm just confused why there's not some document that shows here's what what was done over this time and why we made the decisions we made, so that if somebody in the future, or like Jacob said, a one-stop place to say this is why the decisions were made the way they were made.
Didn't Levin Porter present that in their survey results?
Yeah, I mean, in several documents. I'm just
Oh,
saying.
okay,
I'm
so
saying that was
we can go back there and see how we got to where we got.
I understand, Brennan. I'm just saying I thought that there would be a document because that's what was presented at the beginning, that there would be a document. I'm okay with what we have. I'm just saying that was my interpretation, and I was wrong. I understand I was wrong, but I'm just telling you why. Carry on, please.
Okay. Any other questions or comments in regards to letter C, master facilities plan?
Do you have a folder on the?
We're gonna need to add it. Once it's approved.
That we kind of bundle it together, so we could go through that one thing and figure out how we got here, right? We're be able to, the projections and then the packet, all the pages, all in one kind of order.
Okay.
We had been posting that under the board doc, but when they moved the page, it went back to January, so I don't think those are going to be posted. So they're missing at the moment, but the intention, I think, is to get that all back.
Yeah, Brian.
Yeah, so it's just missing at the moment, but it will be back.
It'd essentially be doing everything we did that.
Correct.
Co-locate everything together.
Mhm. Okay, as far as letter D, next steps, I sent out a message today to the facility committee members and also the board members in regards to a kickoff meeting. for next Tuesday at 6 o'clock. That can be done, a hybrid version can be done in person if you're available or so choose. We can also allow folks to Zoom in as well. What that will essentially do is allow Garmin Miller to meet with all parties and start the process as far as looking at the design phase with a number of areas. I'm trying to pull up my email here as far as what I sent. They'll be taking a look at several areas: project scope, budget, schedule, other general items. And that will be open for all members to attend if you're available. The date is September 22nd, 6 o'clock here in the High School Media Center. We will also send out a Zoom invite to all parties as well, so you have an either or choice. They'll provide a number of, I'm sorry, go ahead.
This was about the protein that the item you added. I missed the lead into that, sorry.
No, the email was about the kickoff meeting, which is to open it up to all parties, this 22nd, to review the project scope, the budget, schedule, the other general items, and then moving forward, as they continuously have bi-weekly, weekly meetings, whatever it entails, putting together a core team, and then having representation from the school, the committee, the board, to allow input from all parties, and then to almost report back to the other members on a regular basis as far as the discussions and what's going on behind the scenes. But what are your thoughts on a core team as far as what that would look like? Garmin Miller recommended 2 board members and a facilities committee member. There can be more facility committee members if you so choose.
So will those meetings be public?
Yeah.
So streamed on YouTube or something?
No,
No, screen, it's not an official
it's not
board
an
meeting.
official meeting, it's actually board members.
Well, I understand, I'm just asking what the process is gonna be for the community to be involved.
Well, that will take place when you start your design processes and you start to have your community forums, as far as them being a part of taking a look at different options and saying which option design-wise they prefer, a 1-story versus a 2-story, what the face looks like, what the layout looks like, et cetera, et cetera. So I would fully anticipate that we're gonna have another round of community forums for the design, similar to what we did for, trying to get to a K-5 athletic complex with the community forums.
But that'll be through the facilities committee. I'm asking the.
That'll be community forums that will be set up in like Bethel Hall, like we've done previously.
That'll be through the Board of Education.
Justin, do you envision these core meetings being held during the day so school staff can attend, or at night? I just kind of wanted to get an idea there.
The core meetings are essentially the core team of school. The open community meetings you're talking about, or like when Garmin Miller meets with staff, I'm sure they'll have meetings with staff members, they'll have meetings with students, similar to what we did with our development of our strategic plan. Probably during the day, they'll meet with community members in the evenings. They'll probably have a wide variety of different times and dates to try to get as much input as they can based on availability of folks. I fully anticipate they're going to meet with a lot of different stakeholders throughout the process.
I
Similar to
guess
what we did with our strategic plan development.
my question was more for the core team, because you're involving the AD and the IT director, and I'm assuming at some point you'll have building principals involved as we get closer to the project at hand. Maybe not.
Sure. I mean, you'd have your maintenance supervisor as well. You'd have a couple of board members. You'd have a couple of facility committee members if you'd like. Obviously, your treasurer will be involved from the money standpoint. Myself. You're going to want IT, if you haven't mentioned IT as far as technology. athletic director, simply for the fact that you're building a stadium. If it was a traditional project, you wouldn't have the AD because they don't necessarily get as concerned about a school building. But with the stadium, I think you need to have your AD involved to some degree. I mean, you could have 8, 9, 10 people on your core team. That will be your regular, probably weekly, bi-weekly meetings, and then you're going to have monthly meetings with board updates and everything else as well. So if anyone hasn't done a building project before, your meetings are frequent, a lot. So I guess it'd be based on individuals' availability as well, as far as being able to participate and attend. So I guess I'll open it up for thoughts on facilities members or board members that would be interested in participating.
I'm interested. So the core team, let me just make sure I understand, these will not be in public. Can the public attend or?
Yeah, if you want to have a meeting in here, you can, I guess, but it may be during the middle of the day.
Okay, no, I'm
I
not
mean, it could
asking
be in
about
the
the
evening,
time,
it
I'm
could be in the middle of the
asking,
day. I mean, I guess it's based on, what's that?
The time will affect that.
I would prefer during the day. I don't want meetings after.
That's what Lori is asking about whether it be, there's so many school personnel involved, whether or not this will be during the school day.
right, and that's fine, I'm not asking about a time, I'm just asking if they're gonna be public meetings. I mean, the reason we have the facilities committee, right, is because of what happened in the past where things became private and behind closed doors, and I'm just asking because I don't wanna see that happen again. I'm not saying it will. I'm
Okay,
not
so
saying
that,
that's your
that
plan.
happened in the past, and that lady is no longer here.
I
And
understand.
I'm growing increasingly frustrated with being associated with that person.
Not-
So
no.
let's just stop this
Am I?
conversation now. Because I knew that's where you were going. I'm glad you said it.
Well, it's a concern of the community,
From
right?
whose perspective?
From a
When
lot
have
of
I,
people's
when have I
perspective.
broken any community
I'm
member's
not,
trust?
I'm not saying about you
So
personally.
you are taking it. When you say that, you're
No.
saying it about me.
No, sir,
Yes,
I
you
am
are.
not.
I
I am
disagree.
not. I am not.
I disagree, 100%. That's fine. I'm just glad you said it. Came out and said it. Thank you.
I am not saying it about you at all.
You just did.
That is not, no.
You just said you want to alleviate what happened in the past. So you're saying there's a concern that it's going to happen again.
I'm not, I'm saying there is a concern
For what?
because it happened in the past.
That
You
that
have to
have to do with me
understand
or
that.
a different person that's
No,
not
it
here
does not
anymore?
have to do with you, but
Okay.
it is at the
So then it
school.
shouldn't be a concern because people should have trust until they break trust.
So if I may, I would like to be considered for the committee just because with my past experience, not just as a teacher, but as at an insurance company before, I worked with a great number of contractors. And I also was a loss prevention person. So I've worked with a lot of building type projects. So I feel like I have a great deal of experience in this field. I will say that for daytime availability, I would be restricted to Mondays before 3 o'clock and or Wednesday afternoons. So if that could be worked out, that would be great. But if there are other members of the board with, longer standing who want to be on it, then I would yield.
Lyda, I was interested as well. I have the time, but I mean, we can go either way. One of the things the committee may want to consider is both you and I will be on the board for the foreseeable future. That's just something to consider. I'm not saying the other people won't, but with an election coming up, you just don't know.
Yes, sir.
What is the expectation of the core three? As in expectations of guiding day-to-day kind of operational questions, updates on the construction aspect, or what level of decision authority is going to be looked at in regards to the core three? That makes sense.
I think those are all very good questions to ask during the kickoff meeting, which is why I invited everybody to do it. I wanted everybody to have an opportunity to at least hear and then decide on if they wanted to be involved or not, based on what the involvement was gonna be, how often, et cetera, et cetera. Typically, most districts don't invite all parties to the kickoff meeting, but I felt like it's important to invite all community and board members to that first meeting. I'm sure Garmin Miller was a little surprised to see everybody invited.
Danny or Jacob, are either of you guys interested in being on the core team, just so we know if anybody else is interested?
You guys will do a fine job.
I think obviously, everybody's interested, right? I think every board member is interested, everybody in the facilities committee is interested because, right, it's been time and effort and fortitude to continue through all these processes to get where we are. So, from that aspect. Now, time during the day, I'm very limited on, so I would not be effective, I think, being on the core team.
I do have the time, obviously, but you two do also, and Julie does too.
I have the time.
So how about we just all come to the meeting on the 22nd if you're available, find out more about it. Ask Garmin Miller some questions as far as their involvement on this and all their projects and what it looks like. And then we can have some more discussion at that time as far as who wants to be involved, et cetera.
I think that'd be good, just so everybody kind of understood what are the expectations, what's the decision level, what is expected of this group, this core team, that it may not, as everyone brings a lot of expertise to the table, they may not meet what they're thinking that the core team is for. As in design modification requirements, the growth of the project, or any of that. The last construction project that I was on, the core meeting was a meeting to discuss problems and what was the construction and architect plan to fix them. Who really wasn't asking anybody on the core team for and mostly in regards to change orders or changing environment that they were looking for to be brought to the approval body.
So as I indicated previously, that meeting will be held on September 22nd at 6:00 p.m. in the High School Media Center. We will also send out Zoom invites to all members on the board and also the facilities committee. Vernon, you'll have to do a special meeting notice, correct?
Yeah.
We'll get that sent out as well. And then I would say you can come with some pre-developed questions, or obviously ask questions of Garmin Miller as they talk about it and things come up in your evaluation of the core team and what it looks like and what their roles are. Yes, sir.
Question would be, was there potential of having, this is kind of weird, two core teams?
I think you can make it whatever you
For
want.
the facility project and another one for the athletics.
That might be a good idea.
That way you can split, and then there's four, there's 2 and 2, and then you have another committee,
Yeah.
a facility committee member on there. The main core is going to be kind of the pool is going to be the same, right? So you, the athletic director, IT, maintenance, right? And Brennan, right? Those are the same. And then you would just, that way those people are focused on those specific direction. And then we have the facility building, and then we have the team that's focused on that.
That would be a way to get more people involved. That would be a way to have more people on committees. That would also avoid the 3 board members having to have a meeting every single time we have a meeting.
Lighten the load a little bit. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, just understand and realize that the facility or stadium project more likely will start before the K-5 building. That will take as long to design, and I would fully anticipate construction starting sooner than later than the K-5 building. So those folks that may choose to be on that one will be started earlier, but then they may be done before. There could be some overlap, but I don't know how much.
Well, if we're gonna have 2, I'd like to be on both because you're gonna lose consistency. You could lose consistency if you've got 2 separate teams. I mean, that's one of the reasons we said we were hiring the same architect, right, is that we'd have the consistency and the whole picture.
Could, but I would also say your stadium project might be done before your building project starts.
Right, and that same logic applied to the having 2 architects.
There could be a little bit of carryover, but I don't think there'll be much.
Right, agreed.
And something else to consider, at least in the past, when the school had core meetings, the notes were published after the core meeting. So even for those who aren't able to attend, they'll be able to see what was discussed.
You'll still have meeting minutes. You'll still provide them to all parties. You'll still make them available on the website. And more than likely, Garmin Miller is the one that will publish or create those meeting minutes.
I would love to be part of the stadium, but if there is a separate committee.
Well, I think that's something that we can bring up to them on the 22nd and get their thoughts. I don't see why they'd be opposed to it. I don't see those projects running over each other,
Right.
if at all. Does anyone else have any other thoughts or comments in regards to the core team?
I'd probably prefer being on the K-5 one.
Okay. So I have Lori would prefer K-5, Danny would like to be on stadium, Julie would prefer both. Lyda or Jacob, any preference?
I'll use the lineup.
Yeah, I really don't have a preference. I just, like I said, I just feel like I have a lot of experience and can be beneficial to the district. That's all I care about.
Okay, well then I will not be on the stadium then. I mean, I don't understand the purpose. I'm not on the finance committee because it would cost 3 people, but I mean, I had an interest in that. I gave that up. So,
But, yeah, and if I can't, fill in those, and I will do the same.
Mr. Mills, do you have any interest in either one?
I'd love to be on either one,
Either one, open to it?
but I would also like somebody else to make the decision because I want the best for the district. If there's somebody that brings more value than I do, then by all means.
Well, I mean, I think we have the opportunity to have potentially 2, so I mean, it would give you a chance to be on either one.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just say open right now. Does that work?
Yeah, I'd like to hear more on the 22nd as well.
Sure.
What it will
I
entail.
don't think Caleb or Rick are here this evening.
no,
That would be it, right?
no.
Okay. So we'll have some more discussion on the 22nd. Be able to ask them some questions in regards to this. See if we can form a second committee, which would allow more folks to get involved, be a part of the process. If they feel like that's a good idea with 2 projects going on concurrently, as Mrs. Reese concerned, and then we'll move forward from developing the core team after that meeting at 6 o'clock on the 22nd. Anyone else have any further comments or suggestions in regards to next steps?
So we have to make a recommendation to the board for the Garmin-Miller. Does the facilities committee have to do anything for that, or we already did that? Well, that wasn't a facilities committee meeting, so that's why I don't know the protocol. That's just why I'm asking.
So, you want to make a motion?
I don't know.
It's not really a voting body, though.
No, it's not a voting body. I don't think so. Yeah, that's why I'm just asking what the protocol is, because I don't know. And I'm still a little confused about the meeting titles, so
Okay,
we've got some clarity.
okay. Well, just to inform the community, there will be a recommendation made this evening by the Facilities Committee to the Bethel Local School Board of Education for consideration during the 7 o'clock meeting to recommend Garmin-Miller Architects as the primary architectural firm for the K-5 building and also the athletic complex. Anybody have any objections to that at all? Okay. So that would be the plan for this evening. Garmin-Miller will also be in attendance. I believe Wayne Coleman will be here, who was one of the gentlemen that presented. Wayne lives up in Tip City area and had significant experience with OFCC. Also in attendance this evening will be Eric Baltzell, who is the primary lead presenter. He's also the CEO of Garmin-Miller Architects as well. And I think they're just going to be more here to thank you for this opportunity and to express their interest in, working with all parties moving forward. Do we have any next steps at all in the process or subcommittee reports?
Well, we didn't today spend any time on looking at the location options, which is what we said we were gonna do last time. So I'm okay with it. I'm just saying, do we want that in the next steps for next time? Or does that then get pushed to the Garmin-Miller meetings?
I mean, we can certainly pull them up and take a look at it, but
I think that we need to have information from Garmin-Miller ahead of time so that we're not, doing it all in vain. We need to know soil borings and the wetland issue and all of that stuff. If that would for some reason become an issue, that's going to make, a lot of changes. We need to have that stuff, possibilities where we can do it before we even consider it.
Okay, so in the next steps, we're just gonna say, table that until
Yep.
Garmin-Miller.
That would be
Does
my
their thing.
thought. Maybe
No, I'm not disagreeing with you. I think that we do need some of that information because obviously we do get community input though, when we show the diagrams as to where people like things. And we said last time in our disclaimer that just because we talked about it doesn't mean it would happen because of the things
Sure.
you just talked about that may happen. So I guess it can go either way, cart before the horse, or we can wait. We would just, again, make a disclaimer that it may not turn out that way.
Justin, from your building project experience, do we need to give them ideas ahead of time when they do a site study, or do they
they're going
evaluate the
to
entire
they're going to evaluate the entire.
and say these are options that?
Correct. Well, you can definitely give them options as far as if you feel like the corner of 201 and Agenbrod is I'm not saying that's the location. I'm just,
Right.
as an example, if that's a location for the K-5 building, then they'll be able to come back after they do their site survey, and they're going to say, here is what's good about this location, and here are some potential issues, and here's what it may potentially cost,
Right.
and then take that information and figure out if there's additional costs with bedrock or running an extension water line out there. You got to decide within your budget if that's what you want to do as a district. They will design what the district wants.
Sure.
You just got to, as a group, figure out what the cost is and the cost-benefit ratio of those items. But I think they're definitely going to want to have the land survey done to kind of present to you a picture of all the available land so that you can kind of make an idea or make a guess, not a guess, but a decision for not only now, but in the future, when you get to CPAP. If the back corner is an area potentially that you're looking at for the next phase, what's all back there? So, That would be my, my experience. That land survey is gonna tell you a lot about what the site's gonna look like. And they're gonna tell you what it's gonna cost and if additional costs come up. Because isn't that kind of what happened in the last project? You guys had plans of putting a stadium in the far back and then,
Correct, and then the bedrock was too close to the surface. And it was going to
I think it
be
was
cost
the school.
prohibitive.
It was the school, not the stadium. They were gonna extend the school past the, where the current high school gym
Okay.
is. And that was the part they said would be,
so that's part of that site survey. They're not gonna necessarily look at as much directly behind the school. I would say mostly it's gonna be, we'll take a look at the wetlands, but it's gonna be on the new location as well.
so table the land use plan until Norman Miller completes the survey.
I would say that.
That was the only reason that.
Okay. Do we have any other next steps besides the RFP for the site survey and the RFP for the construction firms? And the 2 interviews that we'll go through for the construction firms to select? I spoke with Eric Baltel today. He mentioned, I'll ask him again this evening, that he was gonna get that RFP for the construction firms to us as soon as possible, and then Brent and I will get that posted on the website and the newspaper. And then we could ask him this evening as well, just to confirm how long that has to be posted before we can start interviews. So once we get that answer this evening, we may want to take a look at potential dates as far as starting to schedule those interviews, as far as what works for all parties to be available. And it'd be very similar to what we did in here for the architectural firms. Garmin and Miller could probably also give you some guidance on the length of those interviews and how long you want to kind of make them, and what the topics could be discussed and questions to ask as well. If there isn't anything else, hearing in the public. Nothing, Randy? Okay, next meeting, date and time. Anybody have that, next meeting date?
So it'll be just the regularly scheduled.
I think it was October 12th.
Okay, October 12th at
Correct.
5 p.m. But also note that we'll have a next meeting, kickoff meeting on September 22nd at 6 o'clock p.m. as well. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll move. Oh, go ahead. I'll second.
Chris? Lori? Cerise, can you please call the roll?
Yes, Rick Gilbert, no, not him. Justin First,
Yes.
Brennan Hattery,
Yes.
Chris Mills,
Yes.
Danny Elam,
Yes.
Lori Sebastian. Lori Sebastian, unmute. I see you.
Yes, yes, I'm saying it.
Julie Reese, yes. Caleb not here.
Okay, meeting adjourned at